We are the replacement of the furnace. We can just mesh with an existing duct system. We don't disrupt your home. There are no devices going inside your house. We just feed warm air into your duct system. Even before the Inflation Reduction Act came into play a couple of years back, heat pumps were outshipping furnaces. We want electrification in every home. And when we look at how to do that, look at the challenges that are facing, it's about cost and it's about grid flexibility. And so...
Hey everyone, quick note for you. You're currently listening to the free preview of this episode. If you'd like the full thing, the full shebang, go over to our Substack. That's cleantechies.substack.com/subscribe and become a paid subscriber. Any paid subscription gets you full access to the show on the Clean Techies Substack.
Welcome back to Clean Techies. I'm your host, Somal Agarwal. Let's get into it. So today we have a real treat. We're talking about a technology that not only cuts emissions, but does it in a way that saves people, regular consumers, money. So we're talking about Jane Melia, the CEO and co-founder of Harvest Thermal, and they are revolutionizing home heating with heat batteries. So Jane's journey began with a vision to make home electrification both cost-effective and climate-friendly. She has experience with working in multiple hardware-oriented startups in the past, so she comes from sort of that operating background, and she's now brought that to Harvest Thermal's system. Now, they're a system that combines heat pumps with thermal storage in order to help save money in terms of how you go about your home's electricity. The kicker is that they've successfully navigated not only the prototyping, but gotten to the stage of deployment, secured millions in grant funding, and built a business that's scaling not just in one state, but to multiple states, which is a challenge that a lot of climate tech companies face. So to hear about that and more, please feel free to enjoy this episode. It is quite a treat, and we hope you enjoy. Now, before I let you go, we have recently published our reader survey to all of the listeners of Clean Techies. So this is really going to help us figure out in 2025, what are the best things for us to do for you. So please take a second to fill that out when you have a chance. Anyway, enjoy the episode. All right, Jane, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to chat with you today.
Same here. I'm super excited to record this. Harvest has been a company that, as someone who's, done stuff in the built environment, has been on my radar for quite a while. So this is a huge pleasure.
Same here. I can't wait to, have the conversation.
Yeah, amazing. And, I think you might be able to tell us a little bit of, what's also top of mind, especially in California nowadays. And, I think these things are very pressing for people right now. So please, I know who you are, but the audience doesn't. So who are you?
Okay, so I'm Jane Melia. Where do I start? So I'm a civil engineer. I've got a graduate degree in fluid mechanics, and that has really set the course for a lot of things I've done in my life. But taking a step back, I've got a funny accent. I was born in the UK. I grew up in France, but I spent the last 20 years here in the US, in the Bay Area. So I'm a US citizen, and this is where really I've had a lot of fun working in clean energy, working in startups and helping grow businesses. So after my graduate degree in fluid mechanics, I got to work as an engineer for a number of years, working on interesting challenges such as air pollution, smoke and fires, which is obviously very, very relevant today, but also wind turbines. This was back in the late 90s, and I just found that work on the wind turbines so interesting because seemingly out of nothing, we were generating all this energy with very limited negative consequences. So that stayed with me. My career and life took me various ways. I ended up in corporate America, sitting in the Bay Area in the 2000s, and there was so much bubbling of innovation happening in clean energy space. So I jumped ship. I joined my first clean energy startup in 2008, and I just haven't looked back.
Wow.
I've worked in 4 other startups before co-founding Harvest. 3 of those were in clean energy. One of them was in quantum technology, which is another story for another day.
Yeah.
But really, this is my passion. So I've worked in solar concentrator, solar cells, energy storage, and now Harvest Thermal, which is heat pumps and thermal storage. And we can talk more about that in a few minutes.
Yeah. I honestly, I've been happy to do it now. Let's set the scene a little bit. So what is thermal storage as a technology?
All right. Well, actually, maybe we can take back to the genesis story, right? What light bulb moment behind this? And it all comes down to having, I'm a homeowner, I have an old gas furnace, which was about to die. It wasn't going to last very much longer. And I've been working in clean energy since 2008. And so very aware that, heating buildings are responsible for a large part of climate emissions, and methane is a key challenge there. So I was thinking, I'm going to have to figure out a way to do this that limits my carbon footprint.
Great. So tell me a little bit about thermal storage, and maybe you can use that to explain how Harvest Thermal came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So my old gas furnace was about to die. So it was definitely time to replace it. We had to get that done. But I've worked in clean energy for a long time, and I knew that heat and hot water are the biggest energy use of the home. About 2/3 of it, that's 2/3 of the energy used in homes is just for heating and hot water. And that is responsible for about 10% of global climate emissions. So as an entrepreneur, as an engineer, I'm thinking, wait a minute, 10% of climate emissions are caused just by heat and hot water. There's got to be a better way to do that. Now, the obvious answer are heat pumps, right? Heat pumps are wonderful. They're the heroes of building decarbonization. As many of your listeners know, they are moving heat rather than generating it. So they are several times more efficient than even the best gas furnace, even the best electric resistance water heater. But as we dug in, we began to realize that heat pumps are great, but there's still a ways to go. Because when you want to heat your home, you're heating it primarily in the morning and at night. And those heat pumps run instantaneously, so they're going to run at morning and at night, drawing electricity from the grid just when there's no solar available, when electricity is most expensive and dirtiest to generate. So that was the challenge about heat pumps. And so we figured, well, there's got to be a better way, right? We're really in the early stages of heat pump rollouts. Let's figure out a way to do that better. And that's combining a heat pump with a thermal storage, or a heat battery, as we like to call it. Basically, run that heat pump whenever electricity is cleanest and cheapest, often in the middle of the day. The heat pump's also going to be more efficient because it's optimal to run it when it's warm. And then store that energy in the heat battery and deliver it just whenever you need it. And, we tried it out. My home is home number one. And we found we were able to fully shift the whole heating and hot water load. We're shifting 2/3 of the energy use of the home to whenever electricity is cleanest and cheapest, and yet getting our heating and hot water whenever you need it. And the nicest thing about that is we rolled this out and my bills went down by about 35% compared to gas. And so we thought, wait a minute, this is great. This is not just good for this home. This is how we scale home electrification. Because typically heat pumps, which are amazing, they tend to increase your bills and they're not running very efficiently because they're running at night. We're able to do this by, take those heat pumps and combine them with thermal storage and some really good controls. You could have home electrification, which is going to be grid friendly because you're using always the cheapest, cleanest electricity. And it's going to be scalable, affordable, and that means deployable in as many homes as possible, which is what we all need to be able to fight climate change.
So home electrification is something that I think has gained a lot of momentum, right? Especially in recent years. And there's been a lot of legislative momentum behind it. For you personally, way back, thinking back to the origin of, okay, there's an economic case for this. At that point in time, what was really the driving demand? Were consumers aware that, hey, I want to electrify my home? Do they know what that meant? Or was it, this is just cheaper? Like, I prefer this.
Yeah. So I'd say back in the early days, we started thinking about this in 2018, founded the company in 2019, and people were only barely beginning to talk about home electrification. Natural gas was still the way to go. That has since changed. There's been a ground shift over the past few years. More heat pumps have been shipping for the last 4 years than gas furnaces, which is great. So the momentum is changing. I think the early adopters that we've seen were saying, I don't want gas in my home anymore. Maybe they live like I do on an earthquake fault, and having gas in your home is not a good thing if you have an earthquake. Or maybe they're concerned about the indoor air quality that from gas combustion in your home. So it was driven by often climate issues or health issues or safety issues. But one of the biggest challenges people faced was saying, well, I like the concept of heat pumps, but what will it do to my bills? And being able to say, we can cut your bills. You can electrify your home and we can cut your bills is really important. It's also really fundamental to the mission of Harvest. When we founded this company, we were saying, wait a minute, we can deploy heat pumps, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to be expensive. It's going to increase our bills. But you know what? we'll manage, right? We're middle class family. We'll make this happen. This is important, but it's expensive. And so what we're saying is, well, you can't do this in millions of homes if it doesn't save people money. And so part of the mission is, how do we make it affordable? How do we reduce people's bills so that everybody can do it? This needs to be the default option. It needs to be the most affordable option. And we're really proud to see some of the results we've been getting in that front.
I think it's really interesting to see how, technology in the built environment, specifically things that exist in people's homes, are way more tangible to consumers, obviously, than industrializing, a new carbon capture plant, right? So from your perspective, as you embarked on this solution, it's a very customer-facing problem. What did you feel were the necessary key ingredients for this to be successful? What things were you looking for to show that, Harvest Thermal as a technology was working?
I mean, it has to be comfortable. It has to be set and forget. It has to be easy.
Okay.
And it has to be cost effective.
Right.
And it has to be easy. The whole process has to be easy. So there have to be pools of contractors willing and able to deploy the systems. And so we're trying to make the customer experience as easy as possible. So click on our website, get Harvest, we have a chat, we put you in touch with the contractor. Contractor comes around, gives you a quote and deploys the system. So that's pretty streamlined. And then once you've got it installed, you set your thermostat and you can just forget about it. You don't have to worry about it. You can, if you want, follow more closely what it's doing, but you absolutely don't have to. We find about 50% of homeowners just say, I don't want to care about it, and 50% are super interested. And then you've got to reduce bills. I mean, one thing we are really proud about is we've got, I'd say, rock star customer satisfaction.
Nice.
We have a net promoter score, which is that, answer to the question, would you recommend this system to a friend or a neighbor or a family member, approaching 90%, which is pretty unheard of. We have repeat customers, people who've installed the system in their house, sold the house, bought another house. What's the first thing they do? Install another Harvest system. That is the best endorsement we could get. So, I mean, part of the mission, part of the genesis was the climate and finding a climate-friendly solution that's going to be scalable. But, what we're really proud about is the way that it's comfortable. It's people like having it in their home. So it's seen as an enhanced customer experience. I mean, one example, I used to have a gas furnace in the hallway outside my daughter's bedroom. And every morning at 5:30, it would roar on. Vroom, and then it would roar off. And then maybe 20 minutes later, it would roar on again, waking my daughter up. You don't have that with heat pump systems, right? Our system is super quiet. The flow is steady. You don't know it's on. You're heating, your house is just warm. That's it.
Got it. So especially compared to, back when you were getting to market and to today, what would you say is a key differentiator? Are you seeing that customer experience continues to be sort of a problem in this industry?
So, I mean, our biggest differentiator is we cut bills by about a third compared to gas.
Wow.
Typical heat pumps can't do that. I love heat pumps, but heat pumps are efficient at ideal temperatures. If you're running it at 1 a.m., it's nowhere near as efficient than if you're able to run it at noon. So you don't have that efficiency. And then you are typically running them using that electricity, nighttime electricity, which is not the cleanest electricity. So we're cutting bills compared to gas and compared to heat pumps. We are cutting emissions by 90% compared to gas.
Wow.
Which is, and heat pumps do a great job compared to gas, but nowhere near as much as that, because we're always able to do arbitrage and use the cleanest, cheapest electricity. So, when you think that heating and hot water represent 10% of climate emissions, if you combine heat pumps with heat batteries like Harvest, you can get that down by 9%.
Wow.
That is a big impact.
Yeah.
And so people are excited by the comfort, by the climate, but also then by the fact that this is a smart decision from a pocketbook perspective as well.
Yeah. So it's almost like bang for your buck in terms of the amount of carbon that you're saving.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. And so let's talk geography for a little bit. So where did this initially take off?
So I'm based in the Bay Area. So home number one is right here. And this is where we started. And we have, dozens of trained contractors deploying our systems in the Bay Area. We've now expanded down to all of California. So from San Diego all the way up to Northern California. We've deployed also in Oregon and Washington. We're starting now in Denver, Colorado. We've even had a couple of systems deployed in Canada.
Wow.
Now, it is really tempting to go everywhere. We're getting a lot of pull from a lot of places. And I would love to say yes to all of them, but we have to remain disciplined as a small and growing company. So what I'd say is to listeners who are, say on the East Coast, bear with us. We will get there, but we are not there right now. And we will be rolling out some other locations, say towards the end of this year and early next year. But right now it's the whole West Coast, Denver, Colorado, and a little bit up in Edmonton, Alberta as well.
Climate tech founders are taking on a huge challenge. Not only do they need to know how to build a startup, but they also need to deal with hardware, have a strong handle on climate policy, know how to fundraise from diverse investor types. It's a lot.
That's why we make Clean Techies, the #1 podcast for climate tech entrepreneurs. In addition to our jobs, we devote 20 hours a week to producing this podcast for you. This way you can learn from the people who have walked the path before you, learn from their mistakes, and gain insights on navigating this complex journey. If this mission resonates with you, we are asking for your help. It takes a lot of effort and it's not free.
If you are already a subscriber and want to help, start supporting us today by going to Substack and clicking Upgrade to Paid. Thanks for helping all the climate tech entrepreneurs like you.
Yeah, I feel like that was Pandora's box. I feel like there's a lot we can dive into there, but yeah, there is. And so let's talk a little bit about, so as you start to expand within California, are you doing a municipality strategy? Are you doing sort of a customer demand led approach? How did you really decide where within a single state, because you're not dealing with changes in regulation as much, perhaps, what was the reality of how you expanded?
So it's looking really at where are the pools of customers and making sure that we can match that with pools of installers, right? You've got to make it easy. So, we'll identify, we're saying, we're getting a lot of pull from San Luis Obispo. We're getting a lot of pull from Los Angeles and Santa Barbara, and we're in Los Angeles because it's a huge place. Let's look at our contractor base. Let's talk to contractors, see if we can get that pull, because at the end of the day, you need to have contractors who are trained, who understand our system, who can deploy it well, close by, so the customers can have a good end-to-end experience. So it's that twofold: contractors and customers, and make sure we can match them.
So it just make sure, because even it's interesting how people seed new markets, right? Like Uber famously, I feel like that's the one that people quote everywhere. You find drivers and then you find customers. In this case, so am I understanding correctly? You understood where there might be customer demand, and then you needed to validate whether there was the appropriate labor in the market?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's getting pull from the customers, and then let's look at the installers there. What we're seeing is HVAC installers are increasingly seeing the writing on the wall that heat pumps are the way of the future. There are a growing number of installers who are now only doing heat pumps, right? So that has changed in the last 5 years. And so find the place where customers are interested, where we're getting a lot of pull, that momentum, and then train appropriate contractors in those areas. We're getting good traction from the contractors for a number of reasons. I mean, contractors, first of all, they can see that this is a change that's happening, and many of them also want to be part of the journey to help beat climate change, right? That's something that many of them feel motivated by. But at the end of the day, they, like us, are running a business, and they need to, they need to survive, they need to grow. And what we offer is something which is really truly differentiated, making those kitchen table conversations easier, right? This is electrification, yes. It's easy to use, yes. It's really comfortable. It cuts your bills. By the way, it cuts those emissions by 90%, right? So you can feel good about so many things. And so it's very differentiated, and that makes the conversation easier for the contractor. It makes it easier for them to close the deal. And that's why, we have installers who've installed 5, 10, 20, even 30 units and are coming back and doing more. They wouldn't be doing it if it didn't work for them as well as for the homeowner.
Having seen how a lot of, speaking of contractors, how a lot of these technologies gets installed, right? Especially consumer facing. You're really breaking ground on how do we successfully incorporate best practices into the relationship between a manufacturer, a designer, and then the installers who are not necessarily in-house within the organization, right? And one of the unique things when you spend some time in this space is you understand the importance of turnaround time, right? Or time for installation. And it's a very small thing that ends up having a pretty outsized effect on both the contractors, but also the consumers. So I'd love to hear, how has your relationship with that phenomenon evolved through Harvest Thermal?
We have to work through all the details. And what we've In fact, turnaround time, install time is something that we've been working on a lot over the past year.
Yeah.
Last spring, we rolled out Harvest Open. It's a system which is higher capacity, more interoperable. It had a lot of good things about it. So when we installed it, we demonstrated it to one of our contractors, and they liked the capacity. They liked all those good things. The things they were most excited about was the wiring harness, the thing that we don't talk about to many people, because it cut 2.5 hours off the install. And they were like, yes, awesome. So we've been working to get that down. And, basically with the installation of a Harvest system, heating and hot water and cooling with thermal storage can be done in as little as 2 days. And you never have a day without hot water.
Wow.
And so it's what that means is it's very comparable to what you would see for a standard system.
As you discovered, the capabilities to do this and incorporate that into your deployments, you have somewhat of a trade-off in how much am I improving, the hardware and the specific technology versus how much am I improving the deployment strategy and focusing my resources on that. As a founder, the whole point of the game is you're somewhat limited in your resources.
Yeah.
So at what point did you decide I'm pivoting from product acceleration and product refinement to devoting more resources to deployment in that way?
So, we're in a good position right now in that we have a product that works well, that people like, and that we're deploying. We did a fair amount of refinement in the past year to make sure it was easy to install, and we have a few small developments underway there. We are actually spending a lot of time also on the control software. People see this hardware. This is all about controls. This is really what enables a humble hot water tank to become a heat battery. It's all about, fluid mechanics modeling. It's about measurement and validation and calibration, predictive demand, understanding the characteristics of the heat pump and optimizing its operation based on those, optimizing the scheduling of that based on those characteristics. So it's a lot about the control. So our software team is really working hard as well. But we're at a nice place now where we have a product that works very well, that contractors like, that delivers value to customers. So we're able to do smaller improvements just to make the day-to-day life in terms of logistics and packaging and all those things easier, while beginning to work on what's next. And that's going to be, let's figure out how can we make the system more streamlined. Let's reduce the amount of plumbing that's going to be needed, reduce further the amount of wiring. That's going to, that's the work that the team is starting on now, and it's going to be done over the next year or so for 2026 deployment. And so we're at the position where we've got a great product now, and now we're working on the next gen.
Got it. So you're able to, if you have that balance, do somewhat of a staggered approach.
Correct.
Based on what's up ahead. Amazing. I'm curious as a founder. So we maybe didn't get to talk about this. Have you had experience previously building with hardware and software as a combined system?
Yeah, so I worked at 4 other hardware tech startups. In fact, Evan Green, our CTO and co-founder of the company, he and I started working together at Sol Focus as a concentrator photovoltaic company. And, we ramped up those modules from 0 to 1.5 million units per year. Wow. It was really him who did that.
Yeah.
And so all the startups I've worked at had this combination of hardware and software. Much of the leadership team has that background in combining hardware, manufacturing, reliability, certification, controls. So it's really built into the DNA, which is really helpful, right? When you're in a startup, you want to grow efficiently, you want to deliver great product. Having people who have been there and done it before really allows us to take a nice straight line towards where we're trying to go.
Yeah. And so this Harvest thermal DNA, right? Like that sounds really cool. And what would you say that really boils down to? Especially think about, maybe talk us through how you got to an MVP. What really was anchoring your decision-making process in terms of, the trade-offs you were making?
Yeah, so the MVP, first of all, it's about, it has to deliver all your hot water, it has to deliver all your heat. Comfort is paramount. So that was number 1. And then number 2, it's got to save you on bills. Number 3 was the look and feel. So our MVP, and we have, a few pilot customers maybe listening to your show, it didn't look as pretty, right? So we didn't work so much on the look and feel. We didn't even work so much at the beginning on the wiring or the installability. It's all about the function for those early customers. We got that working. It worked really well. We got great satisfaction. The next step was do the 2-for-1. Let's make it look better and make it easier to install on the same thing, which means package it in a nice single unit that's pre-assembled in the factory for the most part, reduces the installation time and just makes it look cleaner and neater for the homeowner. But the first thing was focus on function, which is comfort, lower bills for the homeowner.
Yeah, this is really exciting because, as someone who's now been tenured in the field, this is something that might be natural. As someone who's not built and scaled 1.5 million units, right? This is very cool to hear. So just to make sure I understand this properly, you are really focusing on what is the value add to the end consumer, in this case, the customer. And then you have these ancillary components that can be refined over time, essentially.
Absolutely. Once you've got the fundamentals of we can make this work, we can shift load, we can manage a tank as a battery, we know to a high level of precision what the state of charge of that battery is. We can plan ahead. We know based on your prior behavior, based on the weather forecast, how much heat and hot water your family's going to need in the next 24 hours and when they're going to need them. We can schedule the heat pump accordingly. Once we've got all that and we continue to perfect that, putting it in the right box, integrating it, reducing installation, these are engineering problems that we can solve. But you've got to get the core first. It's that obviously, the aesthetics matter, but the first thing is let's make sure the functions are right, and then we integrate into the product, which makes it look a lot better. But you have to get you can't put the cart before the horse. It's got to be a good product first. Most of our homes have been retrofits. What we're finding is that there are solutions for most homes. Software is just more difficult to protect than hardware is. Yeah. And when you're deploying hardware, you're able to build.
Thanks for listening so far. To get the full episode, go over to Substack and become a Clean Techies premium member by selecting any paid membership. Not only will you get access to hear the rest of this episode, but you'll get access to exclusive interviews, our monthly show, the best, most relevant insights from our shows, and access to our premium community.